In this video, we're going to talk about how to manage and govern multiple AWS accounts using AWS Organizations and a few related services. The goal is to help you understand why companies rarely stick to just a single AWS account and how AWS gives you tools to keep everything organized, secure, and easier to manage as you grow. To get there, we'll first look at why multiple accounts are useful in the first place, and then we'll walk through the main AWS services that help you run that kind of setup. In traditional on-premises environments, companies often use separate data centers or network segments to isolate teams, environments, and workloads. In the cloud, AWS accounts become the main isolation boundary. They give you strong separation, clear ownership, and simpler governance as you scale. Let's start with a quick mindset shift. When we hear the word account, we usually think of a personal email or social media account as a one-person, one-account thing. In AWS, it's very different. An AWS account is more like a container or workspace that holds a bunch of cloud resources, and many users can log in and work inside that same account. Now, imagine this simple scenario. You have a company, and right now you're using one AWS account. Inside that account, your first team is building an application with some EC2 instances, a database, maybe a S3 bucket. Life is simple. Then your company launches a second project. A quick and easy approach would be just create more resources in the same AWS account and give the new team access there as well. But now you hit a problem. You still want to follow the principle of least privilege there. That means Team A shouldn't touch Team B's resources, and Team B shouldn't touch Team A's resources. To do this inside a single account, you'd need a very detailed IAM policy so users don't accidentally see, change, or delete each other's resources. This quickly becomes tricky and confusing. A much cleaner and more scalable way is this. Give each project its own AWS account, like Project A gets account A, Project B gets account B, then you only grant people access to the specific account they should actually work in. That way, it's much harder to accidentally deploy or delete resources for the wrong project. And when you open an account, it's clear which project those resources belong to. This multiple accounts idea is considered an AWS best practice, especially as organizations grow. So once you accept that multiple accounts are the norm, the next question is, how do you actually organize and manage all of them without going crazy? Most organizations use many accounts, often grouped and separated based on things like teams or departments, environments like dev, test, and production, security or compliance need, and if you're going to have multiple accounts, you don't want to manage each of them in isolation. You want an easy way to manage them centrally, and that's where AWS Organizations comes in. AWS Organizations is the main service for managing and governing a multi-account setup. You create an organization, then you add or create member accounts under it. From there, you can group accounts into organizational units or OUs, apply policies and rules at different levels, and centralize billing and governance as well. By using this, you get several benefits. The first one would be centralized management with a management account. The management account is your main control center. From this one account, you can see the other accounts, create new ones, group them, and apply organizational-wide settings without logging into each account separately. The second benefit is consolidated billing. Even though you have multiple AWS accounts, you can enable consolidated billing so that all charges are collected under the organization and billed like a single account. You still get volume discounts and cost benefits as if everything was in one account, and finance gets a single view of total cloud spend as well. The third benefit is logical grouping with organizational units or OUs. You can create OUs to group accounts that share similar needs. For example, one OU for production accounts, one OU for development and testing accounts, and one OU, for example, for high compliance accounts. This way you apply rules and controls at the OU level instead of managing every account one by one individually. Next, let's look at a few services that work closely with AWS Organizations. AWS Config, Service Control Policies, AWS Control Tower, and AWS Security Hub. AWS Config tracks the configuration of your resources and checks whether they follow certain rules. With organizations, you can define config rules at the organization level, so child accounts can inherit those rules automatically. For example, you can say all S3 buckets across all accounts must not be public, and then check for violations from a central place. You can apply some rules to entire organization, some only to specific accounts, and other to specific OUs. It's all about the control and flexibility that it gives you. Service control policies, or SCPs, are one another key feature of AWS Organizations. SCPs are policies you apply at the organization, OU, or account level that define which actions are not allowed in those accounts. They don't grant permissions themselves. Instead, they define the maximum permissions that IAM users and roles can ever have inside those accounts. You can think of an SCP as the master deny filter. Even if someone creates an IAM policy that tries to allow a certain action, if an SCP denies that action, it cannot happen. For example, if you decide that in a certain OU you don't want any EC2 instances at all, you could create an SCP that denies all EC2 actions for that OU. After that, it doesn't matter what IAM roles or policies someone adds inside those accounts. EC2 actions will always be blocked. This is very useful for enforcing organizational-wide rules and making sure no one accidentally breaks your high-level policies. Now, here comes the other service, AWS Control Tower. AWS Control Tower helps you automate the setup and governance of a multi-account environment. You can think of it as a guided setup for best practices built on top of AWS Organizations. With Control Tower, you get a set of best practices guardrails implemented using services like AWS Config rules and SCPs. It gives you the ability to create new accounts that automatically follow these guardrails from day one. And of course, the option to enroll existing accounts so they start following the same standards as the rest. The idea is it makes it easier to get a strong, consistent multi-account foundation without manually wiring up every rule and policy yourself. And as the last service to cover in this video, once your accounts are set up and governed, you also need good visibility into security across all of them. And that's the responsibility of AWS Security Hub. We already covered that in details in our previous videos, but to give you one simple reminder of what it does, it gives you a central place to see potential issues and recommendations in one single view. It's a service that collects and aggregates security findings from many other AWS services like GuardDuty, Inspector, AWS Config, and more. With AWS Organization, Security Hub can collect findings from multiple accounts and bring them into one centralized view. That way, your security team doesn't have to jump into every single account to understand what's going on. Alright, let's summarize the key takeaways that you should remember from this video at this stage before wrapping up the video. The main ideas are multiple AWS accounts help you apply the principle of least privilege at a higher level, isolate projects and environments, and keep things cleaner, safer, and easier to manage as you grow. AWS Organizations is the core service for centrally managing multiple AWS accounts with features like consolidated billing, organizational units, and organizational-wide governance. AWS Control Tower helps you quickly set up and automate a best practice multi-account environment using guardrails that are built on top of services like AWS Config and SCPs. And SCPs are a key component of AWS Control Tower, allowing you to enforce permissions at the organizational level without worrying about them being overridden. And at last, AWS Security Hub, together with AWS Organizations, give you centralized security findings and visibility across many accounts, so you can see your overall security posture in one single place. Alright, that is it for this video, everyone. Thank you so much for watching until the end of this video. Please make sure you're subscribed to our channel, and I'll see you in the next video.